I'm Jonathan Gerwitz, partner with KGB Texas Communications, and welcome to thePoint. Today we're visiting with Kim Jefferies, the president and CEO of Haven for Hope. Kim, thank you for hosting us.
Yes, thanks for coming.
As we're conducting this interview, it's the beginning of May, and the point in time count was done in January. We expect those results to be shared publicly sometime soon. Any insights into what you think that point in time count is going to show this year?
If our numbers here at Haven are any indication, we will continue to see increases in family homelessness in particular. Last August, we hit a watermark high, record high for families in our overflow program. So we always have 92 families in the dorm, but in our overflow program designed for 25, we had 85 families in overflow.
And that's driven, I suspect, by just the economic conditions, inflation. People are, especially in San Antonio, where we have persistent multi-generational poverty, that people just are having a hard time making ends meet, right?
Yeah, it's really, we saw once the last eviction moratorium was lifted in our community an immediate uptick in that, and it hasn't stopped since then, because then you layer on, as you said, the economic conditions, inflation, the cost of food, the cost, and then the market conditions and the rent in our community. For a long time, San Antonio was out of kind of that fray of, affordability challenges that other cities, even in our state, had. Yeah. And that has changed in the last 2 to 3 years. And so if a rent goes up by $100, that single mom, that $100, she can't find that. So that means, her kids eat or she pays the rent. And so making those choices. And then, as you said, multi-generational families. We have families here who, they were living with mom and grandma or whoever, and one passes away, they lose some sort of income, whether it's SSI or something like that, then they can no longer afford to stay there. And then they end up in the homeless response system and somewhere like Haven.
So you talked about the capacity issue, and you're more than maxed out on, especially on the family side. What can you do? I mean, what are the options that Haven has?
We're trying to throw everything at it that we can, from an efficiency standpoint first, to build more capacity before we have to embark on, do we build? So looking at what are our housing interventions and rapid rehousing, and how can we get families out quicker? Their homelessness is so much briefer than, some of the families that need more intensive support. So really trying to identify who are those people who are, the minute they walk in, if we just pay their security deposit and first month rent, we can get them back out the door within 2 weeks to 30 days. We're looking at our interventions to be more efficient in those things. So trying to build out some capacity there, because the only other option is to expand, so build. We're landlocked, and our model works because it eliminates the barriers to accessing services because it's all in one place. And so if we have satellite locations, you lose a little of that model. Even though you could bring them here, it's not the same as I get to walk out of my dorm room and down to the building next door to meet with my counselor, to meet with my case manager, to meet with my housing specialist, to meet with my employment specialist. That's all in one place. And so you lose a little bit of that if you do satellite locations.
One of the strategies that Haven has, and we have as a community, is to try to deal with homelessness upstream. One of the ways that you're doing that is working with property owners, property managers, landlords, to see if you can prevent that homelessness on the front end. Can you elaborate a little bit about that strategy?
Yeah, I think it's really important. One, just for individuals, landlords to know that individuals who are experiencing homelessness are just like you and I, first of all. They just have a little more challenges. Because if Haven is involved in their placement in housing, we can provide wraparound case management and support for a longer period of time. So letting that landlord know if somebody is having an issue, how do you come to us and send that person to us so we can help resolve it, so keep them in their house, in the apartment that they're in or wherever they're in, rather than them coming back into the system. So it's really about education on the landlord's part, and two, we have incentives and things that we can offer landlords that aren't readily available. So we have some money right now that we can offer landlords risk fees and things like that, where they'll be willing to take somebody maybe who has an eviction on their record, because they know we're going to pay the rent for a certain period of time, we're going to pay that risk fee, and we're going to walk alongside that tenant to provide them the support to stay stably housed there.
So as part of the budget process every year for the city of San Antonio, the city goes around to each council district and has budget workshops and asks people to identify priorities. This year, for the first time, I think it was in 9 out of the 10 council districts, the number one issue that people identified was homelessness. Mm-hmm. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's interesting enough that the pandemic changed it a little bit, because basically the CDC guidance was if people are out on the streets, they're in their own pod, leave them there. Remember how they used to talk about you have your family, that's your pod? Well, this was their pod. Don't bring them into services. For a year and a half, we weren't really doing the typical work that we would do as a community to bring those people in. So that really kind of exploded the situation, I think. It started that domino effect, and it also spread it out because it wasn't just a downtown issue anymore. It brought visibility to the issue in places where there wasn't as much visibility before the pandemic. And so not blaming it all on that, because there's the substance use issues, how cheap and readily available drugs are, and drugs that are laced with bad things like fentanyl. That makes it more challenging to have a logical conversation with somebody who's active in their addiction. Those kind of things that have happened, changes in the external environment over the last few years, have really brought those to the forefront and expanded the issue of visibility of things like encampments that people are seeing.
One of the other issues that came out of the pandemic generally is an awareness and of the significance of mental health. Mm-hmm. Have you seen among the homeless community similar issues related to mental health?
Absolutely, and really the severity of mental health we're seeing, post-pandemic is more significant than it was pre-pandemic. So obviously working with the partners that we have on campus that are in that space and the experts in that. And then Haven has stepped into the space in new ways in the last few years. We've done a couple of things. One, we opened a living room program based after UT Health's model. They trained our team, our clinical team, to provide crisis intervention for somebody on our campus who's experiencing crisis. It's literally a living room. It looks like a living room. They can just go have a conversation, but it's a really easy entry into mental health services and support. The other thing we're doing is we have a bridge psychiatric program. So because our community has challenges with mental health at a significant rate, and the Center for Healthcare Services, all of your local mental health authority, they're just under-resourced and over-tapped. And so we now have a program where while they're waiting for their appointment with their psychiatrist at the local mental health authority or our partner, any of our partners, we can bridge that with telemedicine, psychiatric care right here on our campus. So they don't have to leave. They can get their medications mailed here while they're waiting. And so we're trying to fill the gaps in the system so that people can really start working on their recovery from the day they get here at Haven.
One of the keys to the success here at Haven is those wraparound services that you have through these partnerships. How many partners do you have on campus that provide services?
Right now it's about, it tends to be around 45 partners that come onto campus on a regular basis or on our campus providing those services. But we have a ton of other referral partners for prevention, diversion, utility assistance, all those things on the upstream, and then tons of other housing partners. We can't do this work without our partners. It doesn't work without all of the partners on our campus. Everybody gets to do what they do best.
Well, Kim, thank you for the wonderful work that you and your staff do for our community. Thank you for hosting us here again today on the Haven for Hope campus. And thank you for joining us on The Point.